listening to the Heavy Checklist Podcast.
All right. Today is a big freaking day. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time now. We have a very special episode of the Heavy Checklist Podcast. If you're watching the video, you already know who our guest is. If you're not, then I'm going to give you some teasers here leading into this. This guy, hint number one. I'm actually going to tell you this, Marcus. Did you know that this guy used to be a former pro football player?
I did know that. Yeah, I've
Did
done
you?
my homework.
Yeah?
For sure.
Okay. Well, did you know that this guy is also a professional salsa dancer?
This I know from your podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, this guy is full of surprises. This guy has his own podcast, which is probably one of the, if not the top podcast in the world, going on, I believe, 936, something around there, episodes. And I was recently on his show, on his podcast down in LA, and it was a really cool experience. This guy also, the best way to describe our guest today is he's like the big brother that everybody needs. If you don't have a big brother, now you do. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce everybody to Mr. Lewis Howes. Mr. Lewis, welcome to the show.
My man, thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
So excited to have you, man. Lewis,
Appreciate
wouldn't you
it.
agree with that, man? You aren't. You're kind of like the big brother that everybody needs or doesn't have or does have.
You know, it's funny you say that because I'm the youngest of four, so I've always been the little brother to my family members, and I've always felt like the young underdog type of guy, but I just turned 37, so I guess I'm closer to 40, which makes me getting older, but I always feel like I'm around older people and always just wanting to learn and develop, and but that's the first time I've heard that you're like an older brother.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it. I think that means I'm getting wiser. So
I think that's what it is, dude. You're wise beyond your years. And I think you might be the oldest guy in the room right now. What are you, Marcus, 36?
I'm 36. He's got me beat.
I'm 35, so you got us beat by like a year or two. So you're big brother status, man.
Just turned 37, man. I'm shit. I'll take it, man.
Yeah, you're a baby. For all you've accomplished.
I definitely have enough experience to be a big brother now. So I've learned a lot through a lot of mistakes, and I think that's when you become someone that you can support others when you've gone through a lot of mistakes and lessons and adversity and all that stuff.
Well, not only that, but I feel like your own story, your childhood, your upbringing, coupled with, dude, you're close to 1,000 interviews now. So all your learning has been amplified because you've been able to absorb experiences from all these other people. And I'm not talking small interviews. You've interviewed guys like Tony Robbins. You've interviewed Kobe, like some of the most famous, most influential people of all time. You've had an opportunity to sit down with. So that's kind of what I want to get into today, because obviously your format of your show is you're always interviewing. You're the guy sitting on the other side. You know, when I went down and interviewed with you, it was hard for me to sit there and not try to turn the tables and interview you, because obviously, you got a lot of knowledge and a lot of information. So today's your chance to kind of share some of that. And with all your knowledge and information, we're talking, is it 936? Is that right? Episodes?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, so
we're doing 3 a week, so it's going up every week. Yeah,
it's insanity, man. That is so much recording. Which obviously,
it's a lot of content, man.
Look at his beautiful background. I mean, he's got a studio dedicated.
We gotta work on a few things, especially one, how to get into Zoom calls.
Step one.
Yeah.
which actually, I got a disclaimer real quick for the listeners. I hate video calls and phone call podcasts just because I'm kind of an audio snob. And you are too. Obviously, down at Lewis's operation, his studio in LA, it is legit, like as legit as it gets. Audio, everything's just dialed. You walk in there, we were recording in a couple of minutes. Everything was just set and ready to go. So forgive the Zoom call, but obviously with the current world conditions, everything that's going on, this is what we have. But I'll tell you this:
got to make the most of it.
We do, and we're gonna do another interview. We're gonna get in person, because once you get in person with Lewis, it's a different story. He's just got an energy about him that I've never felt. I've been around a lot of cool people and a lot of influential people. Lewis just has the ability to make you feel like, dude, I knew him for 5 minutes, and I was like, hey man, come to my Monster Jam show. And he came out, brought his Jeanette. She came down and they enjoyed the show, and like within a couple of minutes, you know, him and the muscle were like punching each other, kicking each other in the chair. Like he just fits right into the family. So I think our listeners are gonna love what we have to share today, because Lewis has the ability to deliver information in a way that you've got a gift, dude. I mean, flat out, it's a gift.
Well, thanks, man.
And that's why your podcast is so successful, and that's why I'm so pumped that you've decided to make this your full-time focus. Like, that's one thing that we're going to talk about today is a guy like you got a lot of opportunity. You can go anywhere, do anything, and make money in a million different ways. And one of the most influential things that your podcast, did for me was you talked a lot about kind of narrowing in on what you're really good at and focusing. And we talked about that a lot on my episode with you. So before we get into any of that, I want to ask, who is Lewis Howes other than the bio that's on your website?
As simple as I can put it, I just think I'm a guy with a big heart and big dreams. And I've always wanted to achieve my dreams and make something of myself. I've always wanted to prove myself right in a positive way, not making others wrong, but like proving to myself that, when I put my mind to something that seems so daunting and so far away, that I can follow through on the action steps and learn the skills I need to make it happen one day. Sometimes things happen within, a week or a month or a few months, but a lot of the dreams that are worthwhile take 10, 15, 20 years. And I just love life at that level where I can see how many big dreams can I see come true, and how many people can I make smile, laugh, feel good about themselves along the way. Because I never felt really confident about myself growing up, and I felt really insecure and alone. We were talking about how I'm, the youngest of four. My older siblings, my brother was 11 years older. My sisters were 4 and 8 years older. So you don't really hang out with the young, 7-year-olds when you're in middle school, high school, college. Like, you're not hanging out with your younger brother who just doesn't understand anything, and it's kind of like a little brat. And that's all I wanted, was just to be able to hang out with my siblings, have friends, just like a lot, I think, of young kids wanted. And I feel like I never got that. So it was kind of a lot of time with myself, in my thoughts, isolated. I feel prepared for Corona because I was isolated my whole childhood, just trying to figure out, how do I get through this and what can I do? And I would just play a lot of games with myself for hours. I would take a tennis ball or a racquetball and I would just throw it around and try to hit all 4 corners, try to catch it with my right hand, left, and just play like little games to try to train myself or stay busy. And during those times of isolation, I would just dream a lot and say, okay, what do I need to do to overcome these insecurities and fears in order to make these dreams come true? And it's just been a journey. So I feel very grateful.
That's funny because I think that's one thing that you've done really well. I know you grew up in was it a scientific religion, Christian scientism?
Christian Science.
Yeah.
I would say opposite of Scientology. It's called Christian Science. You read the Bible, and in another book called The Science and Health, which was the religion was founded by a woman, which is, you don't really hear about that much. So right. I feel like both of our religions have probably a lot of judgment based on the lack of education, awareness, or whatever they've heard in the news or something. And so I grew up also with this kind of judgment from the religion I had, which I didn't know any other people that were Christian Scientists. It was a church in my town of 20,000 people in the town in Delaware, Ohio. And there was like 8 people in the church. And it was like me and my siblings and a few other adults. So I didn't really know people until I went to a camp in the summer, like a Christian camp that had that was specific for Christian Scientists. And I started to meet other kids, and I was like, wow, I really like these kids. They're positive. They're nice. Probably a lot of Mormon kids, which is like clean, positive, nice in general, is kind of the...
Well, dude, that's the funny thing. I thought, before I knew too much about you, I thought that you were Mormon, part of our religion. Obviously,
I had the same thought.
We have a ton of listeners of this podcast that are, same members of the same religion. And a lot of them I found when I posted the interview that I did with you, a lot of people in my community were like, oh, I love Lewis. I listened to him. And I've had people say, I thought he was part of the church. And because you live a lifestyle that's very much what we believe, which is live clean, live healthy, serve others, love others. I mean, it's not...
That's it, man. Don't judge.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what it is, man. But I mean, the reason why I got into that, there's a scripture verse that reminds me a lot of you and who you are and what you've become. And it's in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29. And it says, he gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. So it's all about turning your weaknesses into strengths. And that's what you've done. I mean, that's the story of your life, right? Like, you weren't the popular kid. You weren't the kid that excelled at everything. So you were like, you know what? I'm going to be that. I'm going to become the best salsa dancer in the world, even though I'm 6'6", 6'7", like
6'4",
6'4", white dude. I mean, that's
exactly
against the odds in a lot of ways, and in a very non-combative way. The problem that I see a lot of people, when they want to prove themselves, they make it a real negative experience, and they're so unhappy and so much hate and so much frustration along the way that even when they get to where they're wanting to go, they're not happy because they didn't find happiness along the way.
And I think I learned it the hard way through my teens and 20s. Even though I came from a loving, joyful place most of the time, there was also, in my teens and 20s, it was, I want to be right and I want others to be wrong. And I want to prove the kids who bullied me wrong. I want to prove whatever teacher said I couldn't do something. And I'm going to prove the world wrong about me. That was the mentality. And yet I could never sleep with peace in my heart. I was always stressed out. It was never enough when I did achieve all these goals. It was like, yeah, but I don't feel good still because I need to prove more people wrong in order to feel good. And it just never worked. And so it wasn't until I was about 30 when I started to learn the lesson the hard way of like, okay, getting angry in these situations, competing at all costs.
Did you say age 30?
Sacrifice. Yeah, I was about 30 years old when I started to
What was the turning point?
I had it was kind of like the perfect storm where a lot of things went bad at the same time. And luckily it didn't go too bad where it was over the edge, bad where I couldn't recover from. But I moved from New York to LA for a girl that I was dating where she kind of made an ultimatum. She was like, I want you to be in LA. I want to see what we create together in the same city. We were dating long distance for about 6 or 7 months. And she was kind of at the point where, and I was going back and forth, and I could be anywhere at any time because I had this kind of laptop lifestyle business at the time. This is pre-School of Greatness.
This is post NFL.
Yeah, post Arena League. I never made the NFL, but I played arena football.
Okay.
And post Arena League, post my sister's couch for a year and a half, started building a business. I had a dream of making the Olympics, playing handball, team handball. And when I was on my sister's couch in 2008, I watched the Olympics in Beijing on TV. And I saw this sport called team handball in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. And it's essentially a sport that looks like water polo on a big basketball court with no water. And it's like soccer with your hands. And so I saw this sport and I was like, where's this been my whole life? This is the sport I was born
to play. That's the one that resonated with you?
It's the sport. It's like if you're fast, if you're tall, if you've got a great arm strength. Like I was a pitcher in high school, if you can jump high. It was just everything about the sport. I was like, where's this been my whole life?
Real quick, on that topic, Dr. Amen? He did a podcast with Ed Milet. Did you hear him say that racquetball players happen to live longer than anybody else?
I believe it because probably just the hand coordination.
Exactly, that's what he said.
The connection to the brain. I mean, also ping pong. I played ping pong with Dr. Amen as well years ago. I've interviewed him too. And he says playing ping pong is one of the best things for keeping memory and keeping yourself active with the brain and the body connection. So anyway, so I went from, my first dream after losing the football career dream was I got injured, had a surgery. I was on my sister's couch for a year and a half trying to recover from this broken wrist surgery. And they took a bone out of my hip, put it in my wrist. And for a year and a half, I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I make money? How do I figure out I lost this identity, which I thought I was going to do for years. Everything that I tied my self-worth around is now dead. And I don't have any skills. I didn't graduate college yet. It took me 7 years to finally get my degree. This is 2008, 2009 when the economy really crashed.
You have no wife or significant other or like
I have no
family
wife.
that's right
I've got no kids. I'm on my sister's couch. She brought me in, let me live rent free for a year and a half. I didn't pay anything for a year and a half. This is how broke I was. 3 credit cards I was living off of, student debt, and essentially begging people for $10, $20 different times in the week just to get food. I remember going to a Toastmasters. I eventually started saying, okay, I need to overcome a lot of my fears and insecurities because these things are holding me back from making money, from getting a job, from figuring out what I want to do next. And I started meeting some mentors on LinkedIn, and I started going salsa dancing, and I started doing public speaking because I was afraid of all these things. So I remember going to a public speaking class called Toastmasters in Columbus, Ohio, and I went to a bunch of them to see which one I wanted to go to. And I essentially wanted to go and see which one scared me the most. Which one had the best speakers where I was so intimidated by, that's the one I was going to join. And one of the first weeks I did this, I went to a bunch of different ones, and one of them had some like snacks in the back, right? They had some like carrots and I don't know, some hummus and pita bread. And I had a huge cast on from my shoulder to my fingers, and I was walking around like this with a cutoff shirt on in the back of the room. And when it was done, I literally took napkins, filled it up with pita bread and carrots, and stuffed them in my pockets because I was just like, I got to eat right now. And there was a guy there who was speaking who witnessed this, and he goes, you must be, I just looked like a bum. He goes, like, let me take you to lunch right here. There's like a diner next door. He took me to lunch, ended up becoming a mentor of mine, teaching me how to do public speaking. We wrote a book, my first book I wrote with him on LinkedIn, and he really guided me to help me learn public speaking and overcome these fears. And so for me, it was I learned quickly how to find the right people and the right information and then apply it to take massive action and overcome my fears. After finally a year and a half of doing this, I was making enough money where I said, okay, now I'm going to go pursue my dream of making the Olympics. And I did research. There was nowhere to play handball in Ohio, but New York City had the national champions for kind of like the intramural club league in the USA. There's no pro league of team handball here, but there was like a club tournament, and they were the best. So I said, I got to learn from the best. I moved to New York City. I show up to practice the first day. No one knew I was coming because I just saw it on the website where the practice was. I said, I'm the only American there. It's all Europeans that used to play professional that live in New York. And I said, my name is Lewis Howes, and I'm here to learn handball and make the USA team and go to the Olympics. They all started cracking up and laughing at me. It was the last day of practice because their season just ended. They said, come back in 3 months, and we'll see if you have what it takes. I come back in 3 months. I show up every week to practice. 9 months later, I make the USA national team. I start touring around the world, playing with the USA team for the last 8 years. But to go back to the story of like what happened at 30, after a year and a half of being in New York City, thriving, my business was taking off, handball was taking off. I was meeting all these people. I felt like I was just growing in a big way in a new city. I meet this girl. We start dating long distance. She asked me to go live in LA. I was like, I can fly back and forth. Like, it's all good. I'll come here for 2 weeks, keep my stuff in New York. She was like, no, I want you to be in LA and see what this is like. I told myself I would never move for a girl, but I was like, you know what? Let me give it a shot and see what this is like. I fly to LA, let go of my lease in New York. I have no place to stay in LA except for an Airbnb for a month, 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a guitar. And I fly there, and right after I land, within the first 30 minutes, she ends it. She breaks up with me.
Jeez.
So I was like, so now I'm angry. I'm like, what do you mean? She was just self-sabotaging us. She was afraid, all this stuff. We get back together. It's like a 6-month roller coaster of figuring things out. But that is stressful.
What year was this?
And I'm resentful. This was 2011 or 12.
Okay.
2012.
First big move you ever made, right? Outside of Ohio.
Yeah. Well, I went from Ohio to New York. That was a big move. But then to LA, cross country, which I said I would never live in LA. I didn't like LA. It was too superficial. I was just like, people aren't real. All this stuff. I was an East Coast guy. And that was not working out. And it was just an emotional 6 months of figuring it out, back and forth, together, not together. And then I was also had a business at that time with a business partner that wasn't working out. And we were getting resentful towards each other. We had different visions. We probably weren't both communicating in a clear way of what we wanted, immaturity, all that stuff. It wasn't working out. And I was just getting more and more angry and resentful because the business wasn't working out. The relationship wasn't working out. I was 30 years old at the time. And I was like, man, I've made a lot of my dreams come true. I'm making great money. I'm on the USA handball team. Building this business. I've got all these accomplishments. I'm getting press, but why am I still not happy? Why am I reactive all the time? And I ended up playing a lot of basketball at this time, picking basketball here in LA. And I was just like getting snappy at everyone. Anytime said anything to me or tried to like cheap shot me, it was like, I felt like they were trying to kill me. And I would defend myself like my life depended on it. And this is just like fun pickup basketball games. But I one day I got in a fist fight with someone. Someone headbutted me, and I was like, okay, now you've unleashed the beast.
That's a hell of a way to start a fight.
Since you hit me first, like, now I can do whatever I want to do type of mentality. Because I wasn't going to hit anyone first, but I would instigate and push, all this stuff. And that really woke me up, because I remember the last time I got in a fight, maybe I was 12 or 13, and I was just like, what is wrong with me? I'm a 30-year-old man getting in a fist fight in the middle of a pickup basketball game in Beverly Hills. Like, this isn't some life or death situation. It's a basketball game. So that was a trigger for me to say, wow, something's wrong. Something's off. And I need to discover what that is. And it went through like a 6-month journey of reaching out to therapists, friends, doing any type of personal development workshop, reading books, just trying to figure out why. Why am I triggered emotionally in these situations? What is going on? And that's when I went to a workshop that got me to open up about sexual abuse for the first time. And that just became a whole nother journey of healing, forgiveness, opening my heart in bigger ways. Just, again, I think I was afraid of people knowing who I truly was, what I'd been through. And if they truly knew my story, would anyone like me, accept me, or love me? And I think that's a fear a lot of us have, is will people accept us and like us or love us if they truly knew how bad I was, or what happened to me, or how shameful I am about a situation.
So when you experienced that, you were a kid, right? You were pretty young.
I was 5. Yeah, I was 5.
After that happened, I think this is kind of the pattern that people follow after something like that happens. You just kind of pretend like it didn't happen, right? You almost forget it.
I mean, I forgot it, but then it was like a movie playing in my head every day.
Right, it's there, but you just.
But I was like, oh, maybe that didn't happen. Maybe it was just like this thing,
Right,
that you just try to put on.
You turn it into anything but what it actually is, and 5 years old. When you're 5, it doesn't do that much damage. It's the years that follow that start to really start to add up. It's like, when you leave a sliver or something in and it starts to get infected and it's worse and worse. And so, man, that bottled up for 25 years.
25 years, man. It was a beast wanting to come out, and I was triggered. I was happy when I wasn't triggered, but when I felt like someone was trying to take advantage of me with my money, my business, my personal relationship, family, friends, it was like I wanted to fight them.
Right.
And I never understood. I was just like, well, this is who I am. Don't try to change me. I'm just like the guy who's happy and loving all the time until you try to cross me. Then you better watch out.
Yeah.
And I just never understood until I started to look within and started to heal and be like, okay, let me figure out all the instances of my life that still affect me, that I am unable to talk about without stuttering or quivering or being emotional. Because if I can't talk about something without me feeling so ashamed, then there's some work that I need to be taken care of. There's something I need to let go of, forgive, or heal, because that emotional story has power over me and is persuading me to be triggered in these moments, as opposed to not reacting or reacting from love and a place of peace.
Right. So,
and it's been a game changer ever since. I mean, it's a daily practice to not be reactive and let go of that past moment or moments that happened in my life, and just really focus on, okay, how can I respond with love and not take it so personally? But it's been such a game changer to live from that space and be able to sleep at night with peace.
So when all that stuff happened for you, as far as that transformation and everything that you went through, it wasn't necessarily fully intentional, all those steps. It wasn't like you listened to a podcast or you heard a program and said, okay, I got to do this, and this. It wasn't, back then, this information wasn't as readily available.
No. The thing that happened is my best friend, who you met, he was playing basketball with me on the same team, and he saw this happen, and he was like, and he was watching me react a lot on the basketball court for months until this fight. And then after the fight, he was like, I just don't want to hang out with you anymore if you're going to be like this.
Wow.
And that woke me up. I was like, if your best friend doesn't want to hang out with you, I was like, okay, I just need to figure this out. I don't know the steps. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know if there's a manual on how to do this. And back 8 years ago, I guess it was 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, there was not a lot of also men opening up in the media, in the mainstream news, on social media, blogging. At least from my perspective, I wasn't seeing a lot of men opening up and saying, hey, I went through sexual abuse and trauma, and it's one of the reasons that shaped me into a certain way. And here's how I overcame it. Here's how I started to heal. There was not a how-to book from my perspective on how to do that. And I also wasn't even thinking about like the sexual trauma as a thing that was affecting me. I was just like, oh, it's just a thing that happened.
Right.
So I wasn't thinking that as one of the triggers that I would go back to. But really, there were different moments in my life where I felt like I was taken advantage of and abused. Beyond that, from, kids taking advantage and abusing to the sexual abuse to older kids. When I was like 9, there was these teenager boys that were like trying to force me to smoke weed and cigarettes. And I remember they forced me to, there was these teenage kids that forced me and another like 9 or 10-year-old to fight each other. And they created like a circle around us and created all this pressure to fist fight each other at like 9. And just like moments of feeling like helpless and taken advantage of and abused. And then one of the reasons why I was like, I'm going to become the best athlete I can be. I want to become so big, fast, and strong that no one can ever hurt me again is also what put me into sports. And there's also benefits to these things that we create sometimes. But the negatives were things that I wanted to let go of finally. And no one was really talking about how to do that. So I just kind of went on a journey myself to ask questions and start digging and see, why am I like this? And that was a very challenging, hard, long process. And took years after finally being aware of what happened to me and why I was triggered to really heal until I felt like, okay, I have power and control over this now.
Well, that's the thing. It's one thing to work it out for yourself and dig through and ask those hard questions. It's a whole different ballgame when you start talking about being the guy to deliver that information to the masses, which is what you became. Like you said, 8 years ago, there probably wasn't a lot of, what you would call an alpha male or a dominant male figure who had influence, who was out there talking about stuff that
vulnerability.
It's vulnerability. It's and who's it? Brene Brown that talks about vulnerability.
Yep.
Vulnerability is a very powerful thing. In fact, it's probably one of the most powerful things because it allows us. I think it's powerful because it allows us to be who we really are, and who we are is power. Who we pretend to be and who we fake to be. There's no power in that. That's just people see right through it. So being who you really, really are at the core and being able to tell people that story and be, you're not always proud of it. We're not always proud of who we are and what we've done, but being able to at least just put it out there and say, this is who I am. You can love me or you cannot, but at least there's a lot of power in that. I think all of us have suffered some sort of trauma, whether it be sexual abuse, that's on the horrible end of the spectrum, to other things you experienced, like being picked last in dodgeball. I was the same way, man. It was frustrating. I remember when they used to pick team captains. I used to get so pissed off because I wasn't disabled. I should have been decent at sports.
David Sparks is not an athlete.
I'm not an athlete. Well, I'm not a stick and ball athlete.
Not a stick and ball athlete.
You're a monster truck athlete.
I'm a monster truck athlete. I do all sorts
sports.
of action sports, and so. It was frustrating to me growing up, and it took me some time to realize that even though I'm not good at certain things that other people are, and the more popular things like sports and stuff like that, being good at other things is good for me, and there's a lot of value in that. And then once I realized that, my self-esteem and my confidence just exploded. I joke all the times and tell people that I'm one of the most overconfident bastards you'll ever meet. Like I'm just, my wife will agree. My business partner will agree. But it's not in an arrogant way. I'm just like, if I want to rope at the moon and drag it down here, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I just know that I can do it. And I feel like you've kind of gained a lot of that confidence too. You do it probably in a little more subtle way than I do. You do it with a lot of class, which is what I admire about you. And I think honestly, God gave you those talents so that you could talk to people that maybe wouldn't listen to somebody in your position. And what I mean by that is, there's a reason why you run the Ellen show. Ellen doesn't bring just anybody on the show. Ellen wouldn't bring me on the show because I don't deliver information you do. But you are somebody that men and women and kids and old people, anybody can look up to you. And so that's why I feel like you've had so many cool experiences with your different interviews over the years. You've been podcasting since 2013, right?
Yep.
There's so many things I want to ask about your podcast. I think I'm just going to get into my questions that I had about it, which is the podcast or the interview that you've done that was the most memorable? Looking back, and what do you the one that stands out? And I know you got a ton.
There's two that just popped in my head in the moment. One being the first time I interviewed Tony Robbins. I've interviewed him a few times now and spent some time with him, but the first time I think was like 5 years ago. So it was within the first three, maybe it was the fourth year of my podcast. My podcast was picking up steam, but it wasn't like that big yet. It was big, but it wasn't that big. And I'd never done any video interviews with anyone, but I finally had the opportunity. He had a book come out, and I was just like trying every angle I could get to interview him because he hadn't done press in years. And I went to an event of his when I was 16. My dad bought tickets for me and my mom to go to, and he had a very profound effect on me at that age. I think I was going through a lot of puberty and trying to learn about how to master sports, my body, all these things, just questions about life. Like, what am I doing here? And he had so many great speakers. He had, I think he had like Jerry Rice and world champion coaches come speak. So for me, it was inspiring just to hear these great leaders come speak. I think Trump was actually speaking there too, and Larry King and all these other people were speaking there. And I remember it was like 15,000 person arena, and he came down on stage one time, walked through the audience, and he stood right next to me at 16. And I just remember his presence and the energy that he brought. I don't remember what he said, but I remember, wow, one day I want to have that impact on people, that presence where if I walk into a room with someone, they feel more inspired to take on their dreams than before. Or if they heard me say something or they watched something, that they felt more confident just by being in that energy and that presence. They felt more belief because that's what I had in that moment. And I told him that story when I met him and interviewed him. And it was just kind of a surreal moment to be doing something full circle for me with that type of impact.
Was that an in-person or a video interview?
It was in person. Yeah, it was in person. It was I guess that'd be like a 15-year swing or 18-year swing from 16-year-old till when I met him for the first time and interviewed him. So I like to do things full circle. I just did a post about Ellen the other day because it was the 3-year anniversary of being on Ellen the first time. And I remember dreaming about being on Ellen when I was on my sister's couch and saying one day, just like you, like roping the moon and bringing it down, I was like, there's no way Ellen would bring me on right now. But who do I need to become so that people like Ellen would want to bring me on? What do I need to create in the world? What do I need to make? What impact? What idea do I need to bring to life? What does my life story need to be about so that people like Ellen or Oprah would want to bring me on, would want to reach out to me and me not pitch to them? And that was a full circle moment being on Ellen. And I told her that story too. I like bringing full circle moments and completing a dream because then you just build more belief and say, yes, I can do this. Even if it was 20 years, 8 years, 10 years, you create so much more true confidence by creating full circle moments in your life. And so Tony was a powerful interview for me, memorable one, because I just remember being super nervous meeting him for the first time because of the impact. And Kobe was a powerful one, obviously, because of, everything happened. But people would ask me before he died, what was your most favorite interview? And I'd say Kobe Bryant.
Right.
Because of how the moment came about. And I've never witnessed someone as disciplined as him. I booked it's funny, the story. I booked the interview the night before the interview. He had a podcast come out called The Punies, which is an amazing kids podcast, scripted storytelling for parents to play for their kids in the car. That's like short lessons around sports and mindset. It's amazing. And we book it the night before. The publicist, someone on my team is on the phone with the publicist saying, hey, they want to do an interview, but he's free in like a month to do this. And I just knew, like, we need to book this first thing tomorrow morning if this is going to happen. Otherwise, next month, it's going to get changed. It's going to get moved along. I just know these things happen. So I say, do not hang up the phone until he agrees to doing tomorrow morning. I'll go first thing in the morning. I don't care when, where, I will go anywhere. So they confirm it, and it's something like 8 a.m. in the morning, right, at his place. And I go, great. I'm actually going to a Lindsey Sterling concert in 2 hours, who's a fellow Mormon church member.
Yeah.
And she's a friend of mine who I'd interviewed. And so I'm like, I already told her I'm going to this concert. So I'm hoping that she'll be done at like 10 o'clock, but she doesn't go on until like 11. And I get home at like 1 a.m. and I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and drive down to the Orange County to get to this place a couple hours early. I get there at 6:30 a.m. and I'm thinking to myself, I'm proud of myself. I'm an hour and a half early. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be set up an hour early, prepared, like before anyone gets there. I tell the assistant I'm going to be there at 6:30, get there, open the door so we can set up. The assistant is there. She lets us in. We walk around the whole office, and I remember she was like, this is a place we normally film. I didn't like it, that location. I go, can we walk around and just see other stuff? We walk down this long kind of hallway with offices on each side of the hallway with the windows. So you could see that there was some openings in the offices. We go down to another section of the office. I didn't like it on that side, so we walked back through these kind of window glass offices. And there was one of them that had all the lights turned off. And I just glance over to my left and I see a figure in the way back in the corner, like with his hands on the back of his head, looking up in the corner at the ceiling. No computer on, no phone on, nothing. Lights out. And I tell the assistant, I go, is that Kobe? Like, we walked past it, so he can't see us anymore. I go, is that Kobe? She goes, yeah. I go, it's 6:30 in the morning. The lights are like, what's he doing in his office in the dark at 6:30? And she goes, he's been here for over an hour already. He's been here for an hour. He got up at 4 and did a workout with his daughter because they were training in the mornings, right? The daughter that passed away, they were training at 4 a.m. still.
Wow.
And then he was in the office, and she goes, yeah, he's always the first one in the office and the last one to leave. Still, this man just won an Oscar. He's a 5-time NBA champion, 20 years in the league. I was just like, this man has nothing to prove. And yet he is still showing up 4 a.m. for his daughter and himself and his body, showing up before the first people get there to just visualize and dream. And I was just like, he wasn't working or hustling or anything like that. He was just literally
When was
daydreaming.
this?
This was a year ago.
Oh, this is recent.
This was like a year. It might have been a year and a half max.
Wow.
And I was just like, it really shaped me in that moment. And also just the whole interview experience. Like, he came out literally 3 minutes right before we were supposed to start. And so as we were getting closer, I was like, maybe he'll come out 10 minutes early and I get to connect with him. But eventually more and more people were coming to the office, and his team was like, okay, he's going to be out here at 8. You've got 20 minutes. Little Wayne was literally on the other side of the office in his huge production company setting up for an interview right after us. So it's like just this weird experience. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to get more than 20 minutes. I'm just thinking to myself, I got to get more than 20 minutes. The publicist is breathing down my neck, standing over me, a list of all the things he can't talk about, of all the stuff from his past or whatever that he does want to talk about. So I'm thinking to myself, I got to connect to his heart in 3 minutes while we're putting the mic on, while we're getting him ready. And I just got to make this moment happen.
No pressure.
Yeah, right. And he walks out and he comes right up to me, super nice, just looks me in the eyes, shakes my hand, just says, hey, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. Very generous and giving. And we're sitting down. I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that you made the time. Thank you. And right away, I just said, I want to acknowledge you also I've got a lot of friends who've played in the Olympics in different sports. And so many of them say some of their greatest moments are when they got to meet you and take a photo or a selfie, like eating lunch or in between different events. And I just want to acknowledge you for showing up for all the athletes who were inspired by those moments. And he goes, yeah, man, the Olympics are amazing. I love this. And I go, I've been trying to make the Olympics for 8 years. I played with the USA Handball team. And right away he goes, no way. He goes, I love handball. Growing up in Italy, that's what I played all the time. Wow. I always love watching in the Olympics. I go, I know, it's amazing, right? It's like basketball, but it's this, so we're riffing on that. And I was just like, again, I'm super excited about this interview. And we have some mutual friends that have also been on the show who've loved this and say great things about you. And the publicist was like, oh yeah, who have you had on? And I was like, Novak Djokovic, who I just had on a few months back. He said some great things about you in our interview. And he goes, Novak is my brother. I love that guy. And right after that, I said, hey, listen, I know there's a list of things that I'm not supposed to ask you. Is there anything else that's off limits that we shouldn't talk about or I shouldn't ask. And I know we've got a hard out at this time. Is there anything else? And he looked at me in the eyes and he goes, ask me any question you want and take as long as you need.
Whoa.
And I was just like, wow.
That guy's a superstar, man. That's not something that happens.
No, and Little Wayne's in the corner with his 20 people waiting. And so we end up going 40 minutes and he's opening up about love and intimacy and all these different things that he never shared before. So it was, for me, one of the best interviews because of the pre-show. For me, it's all about the pre-show. It's the connection you make before you turn the camera, the lights on, everything, the audio on. And luckily he showed up. He was willing to talk and he was just a great guy where he could have just said, okay, here's a list of questions you can ask me. We're promoting my podcast only. He was talking about everything. And, people will go listen to your podcast. They'll go read your book and buy that or watch your TV show if you don't talk about it.
Right.
If you talk about all the other good stuff of life, that's when you get a great interview and people want to learn more. So those two were extremely memorable.
That's awesome. So my next question was going to be what was the most impactful, but it sounds like those might fall kind of in that same category. Is that true?
I think both those were very impactful. Also last year, I had a string of interviews. Early in the year, I was going through some personal challenges. I went through a breakup that the person was posting a lot of negative, nasty stuff about me online and really having a one-sided conversation about how our relationship was for years and just trying to find any way they could to.
This was a year ago?
A year ago.
At this point, you're much more high profile, and when you become more high profile, you become that target. So people are seeing
exactly. So this person was posting every day, weekly, monthly, interviewing, going on podcast interviews, YouTube shows, and just got so much acknowledgement and attention to try to say bad things about me or whatever. And just kept feeding into it. The more people were loving up on that, the more they did this. So I remember just feeling like, man, I wasn't actually hurt by that because I kind of expected it from them. I was more hurt by the people that I thought were my friends, who then were quick to judge and kind of jump on this let's go after Lewis bandwagon or whatever, or say nasty stuff about him or whatever. And so kind of reading those comments or just not having friends of mine that I'd helped for years not reach out to me and say, hey man, just wanted to check in, or whether this information is actually true or not, I just wanted to check in with you and see how you're feeling, or, learn more about this. Right. That was the stuff that was like, okay, this is frustrating and made me feel like I was getting abused again. So I had to take a step back and be like, okay, all my abused little kid wants to do is beat people up right now, everyone, and attack the world and defend myself and try to be right. But what is the higher elevated self? What would the ultimate spiritual self do? Would only respond with love.
Right.
Would not respond at all, or only respond with love. And it was like, man, every day I was tested. And I was just like, this is going to be a great learning experience for me to see how much I've actually learned, or if I'm going to fall back into an old way of being that doesn't support me. And I was leaning on every spiritual person I could find to say, just to keep me accountable, to keep me on top of it, and to really, stay humble, stay grateful for the experience, and know that this is going to be a blessing. Everything that's happening is a blessing.
Even though you had the tools, you had the state of mind, you had training, you had all sorts of big, great people around you. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's any easier.
It's still hard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you still have to make that decision. Mentally, you have to make that shift. And it's just one decision you have to make. You have to determine, am I going to go right or am I going to go left? And then you can use your tools, and then it becomes easier. But to make that decision is really hard.
And the thing is, I knew, I was just like, okay, if I do this, if I post and defend myself or prove myself right and them wrong, whatever I wanted to do, am I going to be proud of that in 6 months? Or am I going to say, man, you're still being this immature, insecure, whatever. You're still caring about people's opinions, whatever it is. And so I was just like, you know what? People can have whatever opinion they want. And this is a time for me to purge relationships, purge emotions. I was giving so much to so many people all the time. And it was probably too much, if there's such a thing as too much giving, but it was like, I was always trying to help people even if they were kind of taking advantage of it, right? I was just like, okay, how can I help you? How can I help you? And I was just like, I don't need to help everyone with all my time and energy if they're going to be talking crap about me anymore.
Right.
I don't need to be against them, but I just can focus my energy on myself and my relationships that do care about me. And so it was a beautiful experience. And I remember interviewing a pastor here in LA, Erwin McManus, that really gave me some great spiritual wisdom. Interviewing another pastor, Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith.
Oh yeah,
trying to make.
He's in the Secret. He's in the original Secret, right?
Yes. Yeah, Michael Bernard Beckwith, and he just opened me up in a powerful way. Also, Robin Sharma from the monk who sold his Ferrari, the book that sold like 10 million copies. He gave me some incredible feedback and wisdom, and so I had these great spiritual mentors that I was just like, here's what I'm going through, without trying to name names or anything, but I was like, here's what I'm going through. What should I be doing? And I just got to open my heart and get coached by all these great spiritual leaders for the first few months, which was really powerful. So I think my audience appreciated me just being able to go through the journey and learn with them.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, what do you think would have happened had you not reacted and responded the way you did? Had you maybe gone the more vindictive route? I mean, what do you think that would have done to your content and to your listeners? I mean, it wouldn't have only affected you. This would have had a ripple effect across millions of people. You're talking 150 million downloads, this a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was probably over 100 million. So as soon as you go do something that's contrary to what you've been teaching, dude, not only would you have had a bad experience, but all these people that trust you, that believe you, that take your content for gospel would have been like, wait a minute, this guy's not practicing what he preaches. And dude, it would have devalidated a lot of, is devalidated a word? Feels like a word.
Sure.
Yeah, so it is now.
Probably. It would have undermined like years of work and effort and all these things. So it was the thing that, for whatever reason, I think having 6 or 7 years of training and healing and progress and all these things, listen, I'm not a perfect human being. I still make mistakes, but it's like having the lessons and the experience. I just kept saying to myself, there's one thing that kept me sane. It was saying, I'm going to have 2020 now. Like, I'm going to not wait till later to reflect back. I'm imagining it's Christmas time or a year out from now, and it's all going to make sense. It's all happening for me. It's going to be a blessing. It's going to give me tools to help more people in the future when they go through something challenging. I'm going to be able to educate and be there for them. So that was really the thing that held me like in a positive way. I was just like, just imagine it's a year out. None of this is going to matter. You're going to learn a ton. Be humble, be grateful, and keep giving. And
I'm glad you did, dude, because honestly, that was a turning point not only for you, but for a lot of your listeners and people who listen.
It was huge, man, because, listen, in the first month and a half, I was like, I had posts pre-written that I was like, here's proof, here's this. Yeah. That I was just like, I'm going to ruin this person's life. Like, they're trying to hurt me, but I'm going to destroy them with all the stuff that I have about them. And that was like, the angry part of me was just like, I can't wait to do this. But the loving part of me was like, what's that going to do for you, for them, for the ripple effect of the community? Like you said, It's only going to do damage, which the ego wants to create pain and damage. But the true essence of my heart wants to create love, support, and lift people up.
Right.
So it was like, which wolf do I feed today type of mentality.
Yeah.
Every day was like, do I feed the bad wolf and go back into this place and it's going to feel good for a moment? Or do I keep fueling the good wolf and it's going to be painful and I'm going to have to just take it, but I'm going to come out much greater than if I did something bad. So,
yeah. Well, you made the right choice. Have you ever heard of the book 48 Laws of Power?
Of course. Robert Greene was my first interview on the School of Greatness podcast.
No kidding. Wow.
7 years ago, the first interview was Robert Greene.
That's amazing. So in that book, it talks about, I think one of the laws of power is, don't pick fights. Don't go after your enemy. But if you do go after your enemy, you destroy them. You vanquish them. Is what it talks about.
Never come back.
Exactly. And that's a hard thing because
I think
it's true though. I mean, if you do pick those fights, like, I mean, obviously, this isn't the conversation we're having, but it's there's
Right.
You got to throw a nasty headbutt.
you gotta know
If your ego is going to take over, make sure it destroys someone.
exactly.
Don't
And-
go in a little bit.
Nope.
Go in all the way.
Nope, exactly.
And it's funny. I was, and I was just thinking of like, my ego wanted to take over and wanted to like destroy, because I was just like, how can this person not be grateful for all the years of all the things I did for this person and all this stuff? But I think the greatest test was me. It was my greatest test to see, okay, when you feel betrayed by all these people, do you try to respond in a negative way, or do you try to essentially let your ego die and rebuild on a new foundation? And I think that was kind of like the ultimate test for me to see, like, okay, publicly, when people are questioning certain things about me, do I defend that, what is true or what's not true, or do I let the ego die and start building again? And people will see the process and the journey of the death and the rebirth and be more inspired by that than the defense and attacks in return.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things was I didn't want to fuel any fire with it also. It was like they were getting so much attention for every time they post something that I was just like, why create any more attention around negativity?
Right.
Just focus on love.
Well,
So-
I think that's one of the most futile things that we as humans do, and it's just human nature. I mean, it's literally deep inside of us is trying to prove other people wrong. It's for some reason we have this primal instinct to just, if somebody's wrong, we need to make sure they know and the world knows. But dude, it is one of the biggest wastes of time and energy. Now, I'm not saying that you just have to let people get away with anything they want, but
Right.
there's a way to do it in which you come out ahead and you don't have to spend any more time and energy on that person. And it's just by living in a way that what they said or what they did isn't true about you. And that's what you did. Essentially you just said, here's the high road, taking it.
That's it. What was the hardest time in your life that you had to overcome public opinions, judgment about whatever, whether it was true, partially true, not true at all?
I'd say on a high profile level, it's been most recently with in 2016, we got sued by a group of doctors here in Utah. Their organization is called the UPHE. And that happens to sound a lot like EPA. If you just hear it in passing, UPHE stands for Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment. EPA is obviously the Environmental Protection Agency. They sued us and claimed all this stuff about us destroying the environment and things that we do that just with our trucks, and they basically blamed the bad air quality in Utah on us. And
Wow.
that's a bold claim, because Utah gets some pretty bad air quality in the wintertime because we get what's called the inversion. The bad air gets trapped in here. And man, I just wanted to go online and just tell everybody what really happened. And just say, look, here's the truth. Here's why they're wrong. Here's why they're idiots. They've sued 100 companies in the last month. This is what they do. This is a business. This is not a do good for the environment cause. So many things that I could have gone out and done, but I said, you know what? I'm going to bite my tongue. I'm going to let the court process do what the court process does, and I'm going to let the judge come in and hear the facts and do what he needs to do. So it went to court, and it was dismissed, I think, 3 times because of how infactual their information was. They were just filing.
Wow.
They literally sued my mom. They sued my wife. They sued whoever they could, just because suing celebrities makes a great headline. And so all of a sudden, their organization, the UPHE, was getting all sorts of validation from people all over the country, because it's like, Utah. I think every headline was like, a group of Utah doctors sues reality TV stars Diesel Brothers for bad air. I mean, that makes a great headline, and they got headline after headline after headline. And so it was frustrating for me, because I'm actually an advocate for clean air. You know me. I did an interview with you talking about my involvement in an electrical vehicle company. Like, I am the last guy that wants to drive around blowing smoke out of my truck. And we talked about it a little bit on your show. In the early days, there might have been 3 or 4 month period where we were getting to know Diesel Performance. We didn't know much about it, and we happened to have a couple of videos go viral of us doing stupid things with trucks. But those couple of months and those little videos all of a sudden defined who we were, and all the good stuff we were doing for the community just kind of went out the window. So the ruling recently came out, and the judge, he's kind of a environmentalist. He's notorious for being kind of leaning that direction. And so the ruling wasn't really great for anybody. the sad part was the money. There was a fine attached to it, like an $800,000 fine that he said, you guys have to pay this. Out of that money, 10% of it was staying here in the state of Utah to help the heir. The rest was going to the Treasury in Washington, which to me is super frustrating because that's not where the money belongs. Dude, we offered so many times to settle this and say, look, we're sorry. We were found guilty of 22 violations of the Clean Air Act. So 22 different vehicles that we had either purchased and resold with the emissions components tampered with. And these were not malicious things that we were doing. It's just we didn't even know the law at the time. To give you a good example, a regular car dealer in LA or anywhere is guilty of probably 15 to 20 of these violations every single month by just purchasing vehicles and reselling them that may or may not have emissions functioning. We were found guilty of 22 vehicles over the course of 6 or 7 years. So a drop in the bucket, like literally drop in the bucket, but all of a sudden this national headline. So we appealed it, and I'm excited to kind of start telling, I'm not going to go out and bash on the doctors because I get nothing out of that. But I am going to go out and explain what the story, what really happened, and what we're really doing to improve the environment, and how I'm happy to pay that money if it stays here in the state. So it's frustrating when somebody says you are something that you truly aren't.
It's tough, man.
The only way to prove that, or the only way to, in my opinion, is to be able to, show the world that you're not that, is not by saying that group was wrong. It's by me going out and saying, well, guess what? Now I'm releasing an electric vehicle that is going to, like I told you on your show, in 5 or 10 years, this vehicle could completely reduce or, eliminate smog in big cities like LA. So doing our part, but it's hard. It is frustrating.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Marcus, what have you seen in Dave over the last couple of years? Have you seen him grow in any way, or do you see him still struggling to not want to destroy people online or publicly?
I've been friends with Dave since I was 18. I moved from California here to Utah and moved into his neighborhood. And I think in the past few years, man, I've seen him show a lot of restraint, where back in the day, he would have been throwing fists, and I would have jumped over the top of him and then thrown fists right over at whoever it was,
Sucker punching someone in the back,
I don't think I've changed as much because I'm still like, yo, dude, you want me to go headbutt that guy? I'll go headbutt him, Where Dave, he shows a lot of restraint. And one thing that we've talked about on the podcast, I think that's really helped me and kind of helped change me, because you don't know that much about me, but I'm kind of like the guinea pig on the show where, I'm just a regular guy. And I get to kind of put into practice everything we talk about. And it's, for me, in the last year has been life-changing. But one thing that Dave talked about was just pretending like things aren't there, And I'm a professional DJ. I made most of my living DJing festivals and big events. And, you could rock a crowd that was like 20,000 deep, right? And you're just stoked, and you get off, and then you go to Twitter, and you have one tweet, that's like, Marcus Wing sucks, man. He ruined my night. And I'm like, dude, I've got video evidence of like thousands of people enjoying themselves. But that one tweet, man, could really take me down. And when we talked about that, Dave talked about how he started practicing, just kind of practicing like things aren't even there, and just not even giving any kind of,
it's apathy.
Any kind
apathy.
of
apathy is one of my most powerful weapons. Is just you don't exist. You're not even in my universe.
And that's,
I know, it's not worth the energy.
It's good to see him do that because, man, me getting one person tweeting me about DJing, seems like the world's ending. But I read some of the some of the comments on Instagram and stuff like that, what people say to him, and he's one of my best friends. I'm like, dude, this is. I mean, just recently, Dave called me on Friday. We were supposed to report a podcast, and he called me and says, hey, man, I'm landing my helicopter in your backyard. I'm picking you up because Caleb broke his, tibia down in the middle of the desert, and he needs to be rescued. These doctors are hitting him up like, oh, you've ruined this. I'm like, dude, he just saved one of our friends in the middle of the desert, And so for me, it's cool to see him where he gets all these negative comments and he's just able to overcome it and pretend like it's not there. And he's still successful. And he's pretty great about just tuning all that out.
Well, Lewis, that's what's cool about our podcast is we I originally called it the checklist, the heavy checklist, because being a pilot, when you get in your aircraft, I think I told you this on your show, you have a list of items that are critical. They're written. They say they're written in blood, and it's check this, check this, check this. And if you don't check those items, you could potentially crash and die. And so for me, I'm a very visual person and I'm a very simple person. It has to be just kind of like in a list, bam, bam, bam. there, I did it. Perfect. That's what I needed to do. And that's why I feel like a couple of things here. That's why Marcus, first of all, he says he's the guinea pig. He really is the perfect co-host of the show because he's the guy who is doing literally every item that a lot of the stuff that I talk about on the show are things that I've experienced and done for myself kind of on my own time. And I enjoyed them. On the show, we'll talk about stuff like ice baths, for example, you know all about those. And Marcus, for the first time he heard about him, was like, wait, what? And now he's going out and he's bathing in a frozen lake every morning. And dude,
Great,
his wife pulled me aside, I don't know, 6 months or so ago. And she's like, I don't know what you're doing to my husband, but please, please, please keep doing it because it's the most powerful thing that's ever happened to him. He's happy, he's sleeping, he's eating good, he's losing weight, he's working out, he's got energy, he's a better dad, he's a better husband. And it's just, it's because we're putting together this list, and it's not just me, it's us, you know, as a group, putting together things that have helped us and then turning and actually implementing them and keeping each other in check, which is why this podcast is so exciting for me because what you do is the school of greatness. You literally teach people how to become great. And it's not just a saying. Like you legitimately, if people listen to your show, all you got to do is go listen to a couple episodes. You're like, oh man, that really was a course in greatness, or a course in vulnerability, a course in whatever it is to help me to become great. And so you marry the school of greatness with the checklist, and you've got this greatness checklist. You've got this thing that we're working towards giving people just very simple steps on how to become better and how to become ultimately great. And, you know, becoming great is a lifelong endeavor, but there's different stages, right? People ask you what greatness means to you. And I think you've said multiple times, it's like today or tomorrow. What does it mean? Like it's constantly evolving, right?
Yeah.
So with that, that's the thing. So I think what we were talking about today, there's a lot of valuable little nuggets, and we're going to get to the checklist part of it here in a minute. But I also wanted to ask you, in your course of interviewing people over the years, what was the most surprising interview that you ever came across? What hit you like a ton of bricks and you did not expect it?
Surprising. It's hard for me to get surprised, but there was an interview I did with a guy named Ty Lopez where we're friends, and but one of the first times I interviewed him, when I didn't really know him that well, I had just, you know, like I do with most people, I kind of acknowledge them for all they've created. And I was like, hey, you know, my audience wants to learn all these things. You've done some amazing things at such a young age. I was just curious, like, how old are you? Because it's inspiring that you've done all this and with your age. And he wouldn't respond to his age. He was like, well, my publicist told me I should never say my age for this and this reason. And I was like, wait a minute, what? I was like, first off, you're not a girl that's like disrespectful or something like that. Ask the age. You're a guy, and I never heard that from a guy before. So I kind of just kept asking him. I was like, wait a minute, but it's really inspiring what you've done at your age. So wouldn't you want people to know? And I think I probably asked him 5 times throughout the interview, and he never responded with his age. He just kind of kept running around the question. So I think I was surprised by that at the time. But
does anybody know how old he is?
I don't know. He's somewhere in his 40s.
Wow.
I think I Googled it afterwards, but this was years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago or something. And we're friendly and friends now. It wasn't like a big deal, but I was just like, it just kind of was weird for me in that moment. I was like, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if your brand is, you want to build a little bit of mystery into your brand, it's
I guess, you're timeless, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of is a timeless type. When you look at him and his brand, he is, I honestly wouldn't be able to know whether he was 40 or 30.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
That is interesting. Okay. So with that, what interview that you've done and the takeaways that you had brought about the most change in your life, like drastic change, like black and white?
I think this interview I did with Robin Sharma, just because it came to mind just now, of purging. He talked about purging people in your life, because I told him, I was like, I'm a little frustrated by all these people I've helped for years who are kind of, I feel like, turning their back on me, or just not reaching out, or kind of leaving nasty comments online about stuff. And it's really frustrating. And he said, this is the time to purge people out of your life and to go deeper in the relationships of people that are there for you. And it doesn't mean you need to, not support people from afar and not wish good on people. But you don't need to give all your time and energy to people that aren't supporting you in return. And it's a time to let go. It's a time to let go of people. And that was kind of hard for me, because I think I was so committed and attached to building relationships with everyone. And I realized, like, you're right. Like, it's not doing any good for me to hold on to relationships if there's not two people trying to work on the relationship, or if I felt like they weren't supportive anymore. So that was a great lesson where I was like, I purged relationships over the next few months, and I went deeper into the partner that my new girlfriend at the time, who I started dating, Jeanette. I went deeper into that relationship, my family relationship.
Jeanette's the best, by the way. Just for anybody, if you don't know who Jeanette is, you need to follow her on Instagram, because watching these two relationship is like, I love it because it's real. It's watching. I think she posted something last night. It was cracked me up, dude. It was just you guys being you, being goofy, and Jeanette's from Mexico. She doesn't speak great English yet, right? She's learning, and you're learning Spanish, and so that was a bold move on your part, dude. You bring up this girl, and you've got this this relationship where one speaks English, one speaks Spanish, and there's kind of a cultural shock because now she's moving from Mexico to LA, which talk about a like that's about as
different,
black and white as it gets. So,
in the first couple of months since she moved here, it was challenging, man. It was great, but then it was just like we had to learn how to live together. We had to learn cultural differences, communication, language differences, and it was like every week there was something coming up that was a snag for us, and we'd have to like talk about it. I was like, man, this wasn't like the first year of us dating. It was like so nice and easy. It was long distance, no responsibility, no stress, just like have fun. And so I had to learn really how to be more patient than I've ever been in my life in the last few months.
Have you met Jeanette's family?
I met all of them. Yeah, I went there for Christmas Eve for a day. And then our dog broke its leg, and we flew back Christmas morning.
Oh.
So I was supposed to stay there for a week to get to know him, but I got to know him for like one day. And then we had this accident with our dog. So we flew back on Christmas Day, missed Christmas, and went to emergency surgery in LA with our dog. So it was kind of like this stressful, and then she moved in that day, and it was frantic and stressful. And then Corona hit, and it's just like, it's been an amazing test. I remember saying before she moved in, I go, within 6 months, we're going to know whether this is going to be like long term or short term.
Right.
You're either going to be here for the long term or you're going back to Mexico in like 6 months.
Yeah.
And the first 6 weeks, I was like, man, I don't know. Like, we'll see if we can make through this. But I just deepened the patience. I was like, it's not going to not work without me being patient and loving and committed. It's going to not work for whatever other reasons that we're not the right fit.
Right.
And it's been the most beautiful last, I guess, 3-4 weeks because of that commitment to patience, understanding, even when it's hard to understand the language and cultural differences. And we've both just been shifting in big ways for each other, where it's just like, wow, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Right.
And I think we needed that challenging first couple months to see like, okay, we can get through the other side.
Well, it's funny because you're a really big deal in your space, and I would dare say just worldwide, but here in the U.S., people know you. You're a high profile person. She in Mexico is the same. She's the equivalent. She's got a huge following, and so you've got these two worlds that are completely different colliding, and you've got your work cut out for you, man.
Work, man. It's been worth it though. I'm sure there's going to be more challenges and lessons and responsibilities and growth and learning and all that stuff. But it's been a beautiful last few weeks, I'll tell you that, because we went through the challenges and we didn't run away from them.
Right.
And we communicate. And it's like, that has to be, my thing is patience. I'm not a patient guy, but I've been like, okay, I need to surrender. This is the lesson. I need to just be patient. And I think because I'm learning that lesson in a big way and doing it, applying it, is paying off dividends. And so,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
This is shifting gears a little bit, but do you believe in God?
You know, it's interesting. I go back and forth on this actually, which is probably bad to say that, but I grew up in this Christian Science religion, believing in God in a big way. And I wouldn't call myself a practicing Christian Scientist. I don't go to church. I'm not, studying the Bible per se and the lesson that we have. But I would say I still live by the principles of what I've learned and wanting to be a good person in the world and treating others with respect and being a humble servant. And it's interesting. The more I've interviewed spiritual leaders and leaders from all over the world, everyone's just got different experiences about God, about religion. And I've tried to just go down this path of learning as much as possible. And it's just a matter of having faith and trust that, yes, there is a creator. And sometimes I'm fully believing in it and I'm all in. And other times I'm like, I don't know. But it doesn't mean I'm like, you know, an atheist or something or against this, or I think it's all just, you know, happening by coincidence. So I definitely believe there's a creator, because I don't think that you could have a creation without a creator. And
I want to tell you something that I've noticed about you and this is I have a tendency to just speak what's on my mind. So take zero offense to this, but I personally feel like you've grown tremendously over the last 5 or 10 years, and you've hit so many different goals, and you've become such a great person in so many ways. I feel like your next chapter, your next big moment of growth is going to be the spiritual side of Lewis. I don't know what that means regarding your relationship with God or a greater, you know, power, but I feel like it took you some time. And you're kind of like me, where we're probably late bloomers in certain ways, where our confidence came to us later in life, which I'm glad it did, because if I was as confident as I am now in high school, then I'd have 19 different babies across the country, and it wouldn't be good. So,
exactly.
I mean, I think it was everything happens, you know, for a reason. But I truly feel like you're going to grab another gear here, and it's going to be that spiritual side, and there's going to be some growth there, and you're going to have some experiences and some feelings and some different moments that you would have never expected to come.
I 100% agree. And I've always felt like I always see myself as more of a spiritual guide and leader in the future. I don't know how that's going to look, but I see myself just progressing in that way. And I think I've tried so many different things. I've had so many spiritual moments in my life. Like every day I feel like I'm having a spiritual moment. When I'm in my relationship, when I'm connecting with my team, with my, you know, people listening, I feel like I'm having a spiritual moment through service.
Right.
And I truly think that, like, you know, whether you believe in God or don't, or whatever, whether God is around you or in you, you know, which I believe it's within me, I feel like being in service is the highest level of spirituality.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what I believe in, as long as I'm here to serve humanity, to improve and grow and be better and express love the best way I can. I feel like that act is greater than saying, yes, I believe in God, but I'm not doing anything to serve.
Oh, totally. 100%. Yeah, I agree with that. So do you pray, or have you ever prayed? When was the last time you prayed?
I prayed a lot as a kid growing up, a lot, and never felt like my prayers were answered necessarily. And then I started to meditate, which essentially is prayer for me, because I'm connecting to source. I'm connecting to a higher being and a higher power. And I'm just not saying like God, you know, in my mind's eye or in my meditation or prayers.
Right.
I'm just being one with creation, with the universe. And I think I'm just learning how to communicate. I may sound weird, but I'm learning how to communicate internally differently about it all, so it just makes more sense to me.
Totally. No, I agree, and that's the thing. That's usually the second phase that people get to. Is most people start praying, and then they, you know, work. I'm still working on meditating, and it's really difficult for a guy like me. I have ADD, and growing up, you know, controlling where my brain's at, because I don't have a problem staying focused or have a problem with too many distractions. I have a problem with too many great ideas and things that I want to do. And there's so much that I can do in a day. But honestly, the most stress and anxiety that I'll ever feel is on a warm weather Saturday, because there's so much that I want to get done in that one day. So many things that my brain's like firing all over the place. I just like, how do I, you know, utilize this time the best way possible. So for me, it's hard to sit down and say, okay, let's focus on our breath for a minute. Okay, now I was listening to a meditation thing the other day that said, explained it really well to me, because I'm a visual person. So it says, as you're sitting there meditating, and if a thought comes by, let's say you are basically on the bank of a river, and as a thought comes by and you accidentally start going down that path and start allowing yourself to think about it, you just got on a boat for a minute and you're going down the river, but you're able to just step off that boat and get back on the bank of the river and stand there and wait and just let things pass rather than jumping on them and taking the ride. And as I started, viewing my thoughts like that and just letting them go by and not giving them any attention rather than jumping on the raft and floating to wherever the next stop was, it's been huge for me. I think I learned that actually on the Headspace app. I was really surprised that
I love that app.
Yeah, it's great. And when they taught that principle, I was like, whoa, that was deep. That was worth every penny that I paid for this. So I'm going to issue you one challenge, and this is the only challenge I'm going to give you because I want checklist items from you. But I'm going to tell you to find opportunities to make your meditations or prayers just a little bit more deliberate. And I'll explain to you an experience that I had. When I was 26, I think I talked a little bit about my wife, Ashley, on your show. Beautiful, perfect girl. I was 26. I was single in Utah. 26 and single, you're old. I mean, that's like real old. You got to get off the streets. So I was just done. I was bored. I dated everybody that I'd want to date, and I was ready to start a family. I had that really strong urge, and so I looked around at what I was doing, and I thought, okay, here's some stuff that I can improve as far as spiritually and physically and everything. And so I sat down and I said a prayer. And I'm a very transactional guy. I'm very I'll give you this, you give me that. So I sat down and I said, God, I want to find the girl of my dreams, and I want to start the family, and I'm just ready. And in return, I'm going to do the things that I know you want me to do. And for me, I believe he wants me to do the things like, go to my church services and pay my tithing and stop, messing around with random girls and dating every girl that I see. And just simple things, just basically live a little bit cleaner life. And I said, I promise I'll do these things if you put her in my life. And it was maybe a 2 or 3 minute prayer, got up and I just went to work. And, I went to church and I read my scripture. And I did what I promised I was going to do. Dude, I'm telling you, 10 days later.
It came quick.
That's the way God works with me is he knows that he's got my attention for this long. And so he's got to, when we got a deal, we got to make it happen. So it was very deal based. But dude, it was like me talking to a business partner, me talking to a guy at the flea market, like just making a deal. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate that relationship with the higher power. And in my case, it's God. And so I'm just going to challenge you to, if you get an opportunity, say a prayer that's a little bit more formal, and this is not based off of any sort of religion. I'm not saying it has to be this religion's prayer, that religion's prayer. I wouldn't go take a Catholic prayer and recite it because those aren't your words and thoughts. I would just say, God, it's me, Lewis, and how are you? And build a relationship with him, and just. A prayer of gratitude is the most powerful thing in the world. You kneel down and say, thank you for Jeanette. Thank you for my new studio. Thank you for this type of stuff. It's practicing gratitude that we all do anyways. And, everybody in the personal development space talks about gratitude. But for me, this is a very clean, simple, and effective way to do it. And I feel like somebody is listening because, I'm talking to him and telling him what I'm grateful for. So I challenge you to give that a shot and just see how it goes. Because it's a powerful thing.
I'm in for sure.
Okay. You got an interview coming up here shortly?
Yeah, I got 5 minutes, so I got to jump on another one in 5 minutes.
Well, I'm going to get to the end here then. Okay, perfect. So obviously, I have a hard time condensing some of these conversations because there's so much good here that we can pull out and extract. So obviously, we're going to have to get into round 2, 3, 4, whatever, and dig into that. So at the end of your podcast, the one thing that you always ask is the 3 truths, right? So I'm going to take your same question and use it against you, but it's not going to be the 3 truths. This question is going to be, give me, if you were to die tomorrow and you could only leave a checklist with 3 items on it, 3 actionable things that somebody had to do to be able to get one step closer to greatness, what would those things be? Now you know
Heal your past. Yeah, I would say the first thing for me is like if you had to do these 3 things to get greater, is 1, heal your past.
I love that.
And that includes like healing the relationships of your past, healing the story you have around experiences you've had, forgiving people in your past, and most importantly, forgiving yourself. I think it's hard to get into a solid relationship with yourself or any intimate partner without healing the past first. So I'd say step 1 to heal your past.
Where do you start with that?
Make a list of everyone that's hurt you in your past. everyone that you felt like said something that hurt you, that you still think about those two kids who picked you last in the dodgeball game, those teenage boys that made me get into a circle and beat up another 9-year-old and fight them, whatever, the man who sexually abused me, my parents who frustrated me, even though I loved them, like anything you can think of about your past that upsets you still, anyone that hurt you that you have not let go of yet, write a list of all those people and start forgiving them and letting go. You don't have to communicate to them this. You can just write a letter and burn the letter and bury it, or just say in my mind, I'm letting you go. I'm forgiving you. I'm choosing to forgive, not because what you did is okay, but because I deserve peace in my life. I think it's hard to achieve greatness without healing and forgiveness first. So that's step one. Step two is another list to write down. Write a list of all your fears and insecurities, and then go overcome them.
Nice.
Batman wouldn't be Batman if he stayed afraid of the dark and stayed afraid of bats and was insecure about those things and the fearful of it. It isn't until he said, I'm going to go live in the darkness. I'm going to go live with a bunch of bats. I'm going to become darkness so that I know what it feels like and feel comfortable in darkness. Then it won't have power over me. So if you're afraid or insecure around anything in your life, whether it be getting in new relationships, ending relationships, whether it be some type of fear of public speaking or starting this business or launching the book, whatever it may be, write a list of the biggest fears you have, the ones that make you tremble, and then go do the most challenging one first and knock them off your list. And I'd say the third thing is to really focus on your health. I think have a daily practice of your health in terms of mental health, emotional health, and physical health. Because if you're not taking the actions daily to nourish yourself physically and with the right nutrients, you're not going to have the energy to be great. So focus on the right things in your body, in your mind, in your heart to become greater in that way.
You killed it, man. Lewis, you are a damn good man. We appreciate your time, brother. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
We'll see you. Bye.